John Carter adjusted the strap of his duffel bag and sighed as he stepped into Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. He blended in with the morning crowd, just another passenger in a sea of travelers. That was the point. No private lounges, no VIP treatment today. He wasn't John Carter, the CEO of Skyway Airlines. He was just John, a man flying coach to Chicago. The plan was simple: observe, evaluate, and understand the customer experience from the ground up. John had always believed in leading by example. If he wanted to improve his airline, he needed to see what an average traveler went through. But as he approached Gate C-23, something shifted. A white supervisor, wearing the standard Skyway uniform, stood near the counter, scanning the crowd. His name tag read Mike Reynolds, and his posture was rigid, almost alert. John barely had time to check the gate number on the overhead screen before he heard the first question. "Excuse me, sir, are you in the right place?" John turned, meeting Mike's narrowed gaze. "Yes, Skyway Flight 317 to Chicago, correct?" Mike studied him, then glanced at John's casual outfit, jeans, a plain gray hoodie, and sneakers. Something about him didn't sit right with Mike. "Can I see your ticket?" John hesitated but handed over his phone, displaying his first-class boarding pass. Mike took his time scanning the screen, tilting it, checking it again. Passengers continued to pass through, some barely flashing their tickets before being waved along. But John, he was being examined like a counterfeit bill. Mike's lips pressed into a thin line. "Do you have ID?" John's jaw tightened. "I already went through TSA." "I understand that, sir, but I need to verify." A blonde woman in her late 30s, also in uniform, leaned over. "Samantha Walsh." She whispered something in Mike's ear. His expression darkened. "Sir, I need you to step aside." John exhaled slowly, suppressing the sharp response forming in his throat. He glanced at the other passengers. A middle-aged man in a business suit, a college girl with earbuds, an elderly couple holding hands. None of them were being stopped. A few feet away, a young black man in a leather jacket, Ethan Blake, watched the exchange carefully, his phone angled slightly, the camera lens barely visible. "Is there a problem?" John asked, his voice even. Mike's jaw worked. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Just following protocol." Suspicious activity. John forced a smile. "I see. And does protocol include stopping only certain passengers?" Mike stiffened, but before he could answer, two uniformed officers approached. "Sir, we need you to come with us," said Officer Daniels, a tall man with a stern face. "Just a quick additional screening." Passengers whispered. Some pretended not to look. Others watched with unapologetic curiosity. John felt the familiar weight of humiliation pressing against his chest. He could have pulled out his business card, could have demanded to speak to the airport manager and shut this entire thing down in seconds. But he didn't. Instead, he lifted his chin and followed the officers. 10 minutes later, John sat stiffly in the sterile, windowless room. A metal table separated him from Officers Daniels and Baker, who stood over him like he was already guilty of something. "So," Daniels began, arms crossed, "mind telling us what you were doing at Gate C-23? John held back a bitter laugh. "Boarding my flight. You know, like everyone else." Baker scribbled something on a notepad. "Do you fly often?" John tilted his head. "What kind of question is that?" "Just need to establish some details." "Details?" John folded his arms. "You mean like the fact that I'm a paying customer, that I had a valid boarding pass, or that I was stopped for absolutely no reason?" Daniels leaned forward. "Look, sir, you're free to cooperate, or we can make this a lot more complicated." John met his stare unflinching. "Oh, trust me, you already have." Skyway Airlines headquarters, New York. Lisa Monroe's phone buzzed. She had just stepped into a conference room when she saw the urgent message. "We have a situation. Check the video." Her stomach sank as she clicked the link. A Twitter post, already viral, showed a black man being harassed and detained at DFW Airport for looking suspicious while trying to board his flight. Turns out, he's John Carter, CEO of Skyway Airlines. Hashtag racial profiling, hashtag discrimination. The video played, and Lisa froze. Mike Reynolds, Samantha Walsh, the two cops. John standing there calm but visibly frustrated. The entire board of directors was already in the meeting room. She swallowed hard, then pressed the call button. "We have a problem." The door swung open, and Mike Reynolds walked in, looking pale. Behind him, the airport manager, Mr. Carter, stood. "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding," the manager said, his voice tight. "Misunderstanding?" John's voice was dangerously calm. "That's what you're calling it." Mike didn't speak. He was looking at his phone, the screen glowing with notifications, messages, missed calls. He swallowed hard. The manager cleared his throat. "Effective immediately, Mr. Reynolds and Ms. Walsh have been relieved of their duties." Mike's head snapped up. "Wait, what? You're firing me?" The manager's voice was flat. "Samantha, too. The company won't tolerate this kind of behavior." John watched as realization dawned in Mike's eyes. He wanted to protest, to defend himself, but the decision was already made. For a moment, John felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, just a deep, bone-deep exhaustion. This wasn't over, not even close. He stood, adjusting his hoodie. "I'll be leaving now." This time, no one stopped him. John Carter stepped out of the security office, his breathing controlled, but his mind racing. The damage had already been done. Passengers still loitered near gate C-23, whispering and stealing glances at him. Some had seen the incident firsthand. Others had already watched the viral video. He didn't break his stride. He had spent his entire career proving he belonged in boardrooms, at investor meetings, in an industry that rarely made space for people like him. But today, in a damn airport terminal, he had been reduced to nothing more than a suspicious black man in a hoodie. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages poured in, from Lisa Monroe, from executives, from reporters who had smelled blood in the water. "Lisa Monroe, call me. Crisis mode. Unknown number. Mr. Carter, I'm with NBC News. Would you be willing to comment? Boardroom group chat. We need a response ASAP. This is exploding." John inhaled sharply. He needed a moment to think. Instead, he walked straight to the nearest airport lounge and ordered a double espresso. Skyway Airlines headquarters, New York. Lisa Monroe was not having a good morning. The executive boardroom was a mess of raised voices, frantic typing, and alarmed investors dialing in from different time zones. A massive TV screen displayed the latest segment on CNN. Skyway Airlines CEO detained in own airport. Racial profiling or honest mistake. "Jesus, Jesus Christ," someone muttered. Lisa pinched the bridge of her nose. "All right, let's get ahead of this." Vice President Andrew Whitmore, a middle-aged white man with too much confidence and too little patience, leaned forward. "Lisa, how the hell did this happen?" She exhaled. "Maybe because 2 of our employees decided to play security guards with their personal biases. Maybe because TSA let them." Andrew wasn't listening. His fingers drummed on the table. "Damage control. What's our official response?" Lisa's phone vibrated. Jan was calling. "Give me a minute." She stepped out and answered. "Lisa." John's voice was low and controlled. "What's the situation?" "Bad." She didn't sugarcoat things. "Social media. Mainstream news. Corporate watchdogs. Investors are nervous. The board wants a statement within the hour." A pause. "North Star." Lisa hesitated. North Star Airlines, Skyway's biggest competitor, had been suspiciously silent. Too silent. "No official response yet," she admitted, "but I have a bad feeling about it." DFW Airport, VIP Lounge. John took a slow sip of his espresso. He had spent years mastering the art of staying calm in white-dominated rooms, where one wrong move could reinforce every negative stereotype attached to him. But this wasn't a boardroom. This was war. He pulled up Twitter. Thousands of comments. Thousands of opinions. Some outraged, some dismissive. A small blue diamond at Justice for All. If John Carter can be detained for looking suspicious, imagine what happens to regular black travelers every day. Hashtag boycott Skyway. A small blue diamond at Fly North Star. North Star Airlines treats all customers with dignity. Just saying, man shrugging. Hashtag fly better. A small blue diamond at Mike Reynolds. DFW, I did nothing wrong. This is woke cancel culture ruining good employees. I will not stay silent. John's eyes narrowed at that last tweet. Mike Reynolds was playing the victim. Unbelievable. His phone rang again. This time the caller ID made his stomach tighten. Mobile phone with arrow. Unknown number. CEO Martin Caldwell, North Star Airlines. North Star Airlines. A calculated move. Martin Caldwell had been waiting for this moment. The CEO of North Star Airlines, a shrewd businessman in his late 50s, had orchestrated plenty of corporate plays before. But this was a gold mine. John Carter was young, black, and ambitious. Many in the industry had been waiting for him to fail. And now, thanks to an incident in his own airline, Carter wasn't just on the defensive. He was vulnerable. Caldwell smirked as his assistant confirmed that Carter had answered. "John," he greeted smoothly. "Rough morning." A long pause. "Martin," John said. "If you're calling to gloat, save it." Caldwell chuckled. "Oh, come on now. No need for hostility. I was just thinking situations like this. They reveal a company's true culture." John's grip tightened around his cup. "Let me guess," he said coolly. "You want to make a public statement about supporting diversity while quietly pushing the narrative that Skyway has a racism problem." Caldwell's laugh was barely concealed. John, I would never do such a thing." Caldwell sighed theatrically. "Listen, if you need a fresh start, North Star is always looking for forward-thinking executives to join our team. No profiling included." John's jaw clenched. He knew exactly what this was, an offer wrapped in an insult. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Caldwell didn't even bother denying it. "Enjoying? No. But let's be real. You're in damage control. Investors are watching. Maybe it's time to consider other options." John closed his eyes for half a second, then hung up. He was done playing defense. Back to the boardroom. Lisa looked up as John entered the conference call. His face was stone-cold serious. "We're not apologizing." His voice cut through the noise. The board members stopped talking. Andrew Whitmore blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me," John continued. "No defensive corporate nonsense. No, we regret the misunderstanding. None of that." Lisa smirked. He was pissed. "Good." John leaned forward. "This isn't just about me. If a black CEO can be treated like that, imagine what happens to our passengers. Imagine what happens to our employees. We fix this by making real changes, not just firing 2 people and moving on." A beat of silence. Then slowly, Lisa nodded. "I'll draft the statement." John exhaled. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And if North Star thought they could use this against him, they had no idea who they were dealing with. John Carter had been playing fair his entire career, working twice as hard, proving his worth, navigating corporate politics with precision. That was over. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport was just a symptom. North Star Airlines was the disease. As he sat in his corner office in Atlanta, the city lights glowing beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, John pulled up his inbox. An envelope with an arrow. Subject: urgent, information on North Star's involvement. Lisa had moved fast. The email contained internal communications leaked from North Star Airlines' executive team. John clicked a PDF open from Michael Hastings, North Star's PR director, to Martin Caldwell, CEO. Subject: Skyway Airlines Incident Media Strategy. Marin, the video is spreading faster than expected. Public sentiment is turning sharply against Skyway. Our sponsored posts on Twitter and LinkedIn are gaining traction. The subtle push toward North Star as a better alternative is working. Engagement is up 37%. Do we move forward with Phase 2? John's blood ran cold. Lisa had been right. North Star wasn't just capitalizing on the crisis. They had engineered it. Another attachment, security footage. He clicked the grainy airport security clip. It showed the North Star executive, Daniel Pierce, their senior VP of operations, talking to Mike Reynolds at a coffee kiosk near gate C-23, 5 minutes before John arrived at the gate. This wasn't a coincidence. John leaned back, exhaling through his nose. His fingers drummed against the desk. Mike had been following orders. And now John had proof. Skyway Boardroom. Emergency meeting. Lisa Monroe stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. The executives were silent as she finished her presentation. So Lisa closed her laptop. North Star orchestrated a PR attack against us. What's our response? Andrew Whitmore rubbed his temples. We could sue. John scoffed. And spend 2 years in litigation while North Star eats our market share? No. A beat of silence. Then Lisa smirked. We fight back. John nodded. Lisa, what do we have ready for release? She picked up her phone. A carefully worded statement exposing North Star's manipulation, along with the leaked emails and security footage. Andrew hesitated. If we go public with this, it's war. John's eyes were like steel. Then let's go to war. Lisa pressed send. Breaking news. Within an hour, every major news outlet had picked up the story. Television, CNN. Leaked emails suggest North Star Airlines' direct involvement in racial profiling incident at DFW. Television, NBC. New developments. Was Skyway CEO a victim of corporate sabotage? Television. Twitter. Hashtag North Star exposed trending at #1 worldwide. John watched as the narrative flipped. For once, he wasn't the one on the defensive. North Star was. North Star Airlines headquarters. Damage control. Martin Caldwell's office was in chaos. Lawyers, PR reps, and senior executives shouted over each other, scrambling to contain the fallout. Who leaked those emails? Caldwell's voice was sharp. His PR director looked pale. We don't know yet, but the security footage. This is Carter's doing. Caldwell seethed. He had underestimated the man. That was a mistake. North Star stock was already dropping. Investors were furious. He needed an out. Caldwell grabbed his phone and dialed. Mobile phone with arrow, calling John Carter. Final confrontation. John stared at his ringing phone. Mobile phone with arrow, Martin Caldwell calling. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Want me to answer? John shook his head. No, I'll handle it. He picked up. John, Caldwell said smoothly, as if they were old friends. We should talk. John leaned back in his chair. Talk or negotiate your way out of this mess. A tense pause. Then Caldwell exhaled. Look, we both know this is just business. We got a little aggressive with our PR strategy. It happens. Let's be reasonable. John's voice was sharp. Reasonable. You tried to humiliate me. You tried to destroy my company's reputation, and now you want to talk about reason. All right. Caldwell's voice lost its charm. What do you want? John smiled a slow, calculated smile. I want your resignation. Silence. Caldwell laughed, but it was hollow. You're dreaming, Carter. John glanced at his computer screen. A new headline flashed across Bloomberg television. North Star CEO under fire. Will Caldwell resign? John chuckled. Am I? Caldwell was trapped. The board would never survive this level of scandal. If he didn't step down, they'd push him out. John let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. You underestimated me. Martin, that was your first mistake. A beat, then Caldwell hung up. John smirked. And that was your last resolution. By the end of the day, North Star Airlines released a statement over the loudspeaker. Effective immediately, CEO Martin Caldwell is stepping down. North Star Airlines remains committed to fairness and integrity in the aviation industry. John read it over lunch. Victory never tasted so good. The morning after Martin Caldwell's resignation, the aviation industry was still reeling. John Carter sat in his office, sipping his usual black coffee as news anchors dissected the fallout. Television, CNN. North Star Airlines in crisis. How far did the sabotage go? Television, Bloomberg. John Carter emerges stronger after corporate attack. Television, Fox Business. Will this scandal change airline industry policies? John sighed. Winning a battle wasn't the same as winning the war. The system was still broken. Lisa Monroe walked in, placing a thick folder on his desk. Legal and HR compiled everything. We're getting requests from other CEOs for guidance on handling racial bias internally. John smirked. Now they care. Lisa sat down. The board wants to know our next move. John closed his eyes for a second, thinking. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. Mobile phone with Aero, calling FAA director's office. It was time to make real changes. North Star Airlines, a company in free fall. Meanwhile, at North Star Airlines, the situation had only worsened. The company's stock had dropped 14%, and customers were canceling flights. The board had forced Caldwell out, but they needed a scapegoat, someone to take the full blame. So they threw Daniel Pierce, their senior VP of operations, under the bus. Loudspeaker. Official statement. North Star Airlines strongly condemns the unethical behavior of former executive Daniel Pierce, who acted without the company's knowledge. We remain committed to fair business practices. John read the statement and laughed bitterly. They were lying. Pierce was just a pawn. Caldwell had authorized everything, and they all knew it. But John didn't need revenge anymore. He had bigger plans, a policy shift in the aviation industry. Within a week, John's next move took shape. Loudspeaker. Skyway Airlines announces a new industry-first initiative. Small Blue Diamond, mandatory racial bias training for all employees. Small Blue Diamond, a new passenger rights policy to prevent discrimination. Small Blue Diamond, collaboration with other airlines to push for federal policy changes. John's phone buzzed nonstop as executives from Delta, United, and American Airlines reached out. For years, companies had been comfortable ignoring issues of racial profiling. Not anymore. Lisa walked in, holding up her phone. The FAA just confirmed a meeting next week. They want your input. John nodded. Good. Let's make sure this never happens again. Mike Reynolds and Samantha Walsh, the aftermath. Somewhere in Dallas, Mike Reynolds sat alone in a cheap motel room, scrolling through job listings. His Twitter rants defending himself had only made things worse. He had gone from a supervisor at a major airline to unemployable overnight. Envelope with Aero. New email. Small Blue Diamond. Your application for X Airline has been declined. Mike slammed his laptop shut. He had thought that playing along with North Star's scheme would get him ahead. Instead, he had lost everything. Samantha Walsh, on the other hand, had hired a lawyer. She was suing for wrongful termination, claiming she was just following orders. John didn't care. They weren't his problem anymore. Ethan Blake, the power of one. Ethan Blake, the lawyer who had filmed the incident, was sitting in a high-rise office in Chicago when he got the email. Envelope with Aero. Subject, partner promotion announcement. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. His firm had taken notice of how he had handled the situation, not just filming, but also helping spread the truth. Now, he was being made a full partner. One small act had changed everything. John Carter, moving forward. A week later, John Carter boarded another flight. This time he was flying to San Francisco for a meeting with civil rights leaders and aviation executives. As he approached the gate, a Skyway Airlines employee looked up. The man froze, recognition flashing across his face. For a split second, John expected the same treatment as before, but instead, the employee straightened his posture and nodded with respect. Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter. John smiled, handing over his ticket. This time, no one asked for extra identification, and for the first time in weeks, John Carter just felt like a man boarding a plane. Exactly how it should be. John Carter stared out the window as the Skyway Airlines flight cruised at 35,000 feet, the soft hum of the engines, the faint chatter of passengers. It was a routine flight, nothing extraordinary. And yet for him, everything had changed. He had spent years building his reputation, breaking barriers, leading with integrity. But in a single moment, standing at gate C-23, all of that had been stripped away. He had been reminded of exactly who he was in this country. But now the world had changed too. Television, CNN. Skyway Airlines' new policies spark industry-wide reform. Television, Bloomberg. John Carter named most influential CEO of the year after landmark aviation changes. Television, Forbes. The man who took on North Star Airlines and won. Lisa Monroe had sent him the articles that morning. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt exhausted. Mr. Carter? He turned. A flight attendant, A young black woman with warm eyes stood beside his seat. "I just wanted to say." She hesitated, then smiled. "What you did, it mattered." John held her gaze. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure no one else went through what he had. He nodded. "Thank you." 1 year later, a new industry standard. The aviation industry was different now. Small Blue Diamond. All major U.S. airlines had adopted Skyway's new anti-discrimination policies. Small Blue Diamond. The FAA had implemented mandatory racial bias training for security and airport staff. Small Blue Diamond. Passengers now had stronger protections against profiling. As for North Star Airlines, Small Blue Diamond. Their stock never fully recovered. Small Blue Diamond. Their new CEO issued a formal apology, but it was too little, too late. Small Blue Diamond. Passengers weren't so quick to forget. Skyway Airlines Boardroom victory. John sat at the head of the Skyway Boardroom, watching as the directors unanimously approved his final proposal. A new scholarship program to help underrepresented students enter the aviation industry. Lisa smirked from across the table. "You'll move North Star." John chuckled. "They're not playing in our league anymore." Final scene. A moment of peace. That evening, John walked through Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. No bodyguards, no assistants, just a man walking through an airport. And this time, no one stopped him. No one questioned him. He smiled to himself, feeling something he hadn't in a long time: freedom.